A woman's voice, shaking, frantic. Words tumbling over each other, swallowed by terror. "He's shooting, please, God, help me. My son, he's shooting his brother." The dispatcher's voice cuts in, measured, controlled. "Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line." "Where are you?" Another crack of gunfire. Then another. And another. A sharp gasp, followed by muffled sobs. The line goes silent. Outside, the neighborhood is quiet. Houses dark, blinds drawn. The kind of street where nothing ever happens, until it does. A mother stands frozen in her own doorway, staring at the lifeless body of her son, his blood pooling at her feet. Another son stands over him, the gun still warm in his hand. A crime measured not in moments, but in bullets. 27. This was not an accident. This was not a struggle that got out of hand. This was something else. What could drive one brother to empty a gun into another, while their mother begged for it to stop? Some say it was years in the making. Others claim no one saw it coming. But the truth? The truth is buried beneath the weight of family secrets, whispered grudges, and a past neither brother could outrun. They were brothers. Born just 3 years apart. Grew up in the same house, ate at the same table, fought over the same toys. People say family is everything. That blood is thicker than water. That no matter how bad things get, brothers are supposed to protect each other. But on that night, one of them made a choice. It happened in a quiet Florida neighborhood. The kind of place where lawns are neatly trimmed, where neighbors smile and wave, where the biggest excitement is a weekend barbecue. A place where doors are left unlocked, because nothing ever happens there. Until it did. The name alone, Florida Man, has become a legend. A punchline. A meme. But there was nothing funny about what happened in that house. Nothing amusing about the way one brother stood over the other, the weight of the gun still pressing into his palm. The people who knew them never saw it coming. Not the friends who played baseball with them as kids. Not the teachers who watched them grow up. Not even their own mother, the woman who had bandaged their scraped knees, wiped their tears, and told them, over and over again, that family is supposed to stick together. But something had been growing between them for years. Something silent. Something that had no name, until it was too late. 27 bullets. A mother's screams. A crime scene soaked in red. But why? What turns brother against brother? What fractures the bond so deeply that there's no coming back? Maybe the answer was buried long before the first shot was fired. It started as nothing. A quiet evening, a mother in the kitchen, the hum of a television in the background. No one remembers the exact words. Maybe they were about something small. A borrowed tool. A forgotten favor. A bad joke that cut too deep. Or maybe it was something that had been festering for years, resentments that had no words, only weight. But that weight crushed everything in an instant. Voices rose. Chairs scraped against the floor. One brother took a step forward, the other didn't back down. And then, a single decision. A mother stood frozen as one of her sons reached for something she never thought he'd use. A gun. She said his brother raised his hands, palms open. No weapon. No threat. Just shock on his face. He took a step back. Then another. And then, the first shot. The crack of the bullet swallowed the air, silencing everything else. The body jerked. A gasp. A stumble. But he didn't fall. Not yet. Stop. Stop, please. The words ripped from his throat. The second shot. The third. The fourth. By the fifth, he was on the ground. By the 10th, his mother could barely see through the tears. By the 15th, the pleading had stopped. By the 27th, the only sound left in the house was the empty click of a trigger. And then, silence. The gun lowered. Smoke curled into the air. A mother sobbed over one son while the other stood above them both, his chest rising and falling. His face, blank. No rage. No relief. Just a hollow stare. The weight of what he had done settled into the room. And then, as if remembering there was still a world beyond that moment, he reached for his phone. 3 numbers. A pause. Then his voice, steady and even. I just shot my brother. They say tragedy doesn't come out of nowhere. It builds, piece by piece, waiting for the right moment to crack the foundation. This wasn't the first time they had fought. As children, they were inseparable, 2 halves of the same whole. They played in the same backyard, shared the same hand-me-downs, finished each other's sentences. But as they got older, something changed. The laughter turned to competition. A shove here, a bruised arm there. Small things, until they weren't. One Christmas, a black eye. A family barbecue, a broken nose. Their mother told herself it was normal, brothers fight. Boys grow out of it. She convinced herself the tension would pass, that whatever was between them would smooth itself over with time. She was wrong. The police were called once, years before. A neighbor overheard a crash, something heavy breaking against a wall. By the time officers arrived, both brothers stood at the door, their faces blank, their voices calm. Nothing had happened, they insisted. Just boys roughhousing. The officers left. But behind closed doors, one of them still had a fractured rib. People whispered about money. About who had borrowed from whom. Who owed what. Their father had left behind something, land, savings, a house. The details were murky, but the bitterness was clear. The older one always felt like he had done more, deserved more. The younger one saw it differently. Some say it wasn't about money at all. Maybe it was jealousy. One brother had always been more likable, the one who lit up a room, who could charm his way out of anything. The other, the one with the gun, was different. Quieter. Always watching. And then there was her. A woman. No one knows how much she had to do with it, but she was there, woven into their history. A name that came up in arguments, a presence that lingered even after she was gone. Did she pick one over the other? Did she play them against each other? Or was she just another excuse? All of it led to that night. Years of anger. A lifetime of words left unsaid. And a mother caught in the middle, watching as the pieces of her family shattered in front of her. When officers arrived, the street was silent. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, makes your own heartbeat sound too loud. Inside the house, the air smelled like gunpowder. A metallic sharpness mixed with something heavier, something final. The shooter stood near the body, the gun still in his hand. His expression? Empty. Not angry. Not remorseful. Just, there. The mother was the one who spoke first, her voice barely holding together. He wouldn't stop. He wouldn't stop. Paramedics checked, but they already knew. There was no need to rush. 27 bullets. Not 1. Not 2. 27. The officers asked the shooter to put the gun down. He did. Slowly. No argument, no fight. His hands trembled, but his voice was steady. He was going to kill me, he said. No one responded. The first officer on the scene later admitted he expected something different, anger, panic, some kind of break in composure. Instead, the shooter was eerily composed. As if he had made peace with whatever came next. But the mother, she wasn't calm. She kept reaching for the body, sobbing, repeating the same words. They were just boys. My boys. Inside the interrogation room, the shooter told his story. He came at me. I had no choice. The detective across from him didn't move, didn't blink. You fired 27 times. A long pause. He wouldn't stop. The autopsy report came in days later. Of the 27 shots, 15 were unnecessary. The first few were enough. The rest? Overkill. The pathologist's words hung heavy in the air. Rage. Not self-defense. Not a struggle. This was personal. Ballistics confirmed the shots were close range. Some fired while the victim was already on the ground. A crime of passion. A lifetime of resentment exploding in one violent moment. Or was there something else? Friends came forward. One of them mentioned an argument a week before. He said he'd kill his brother. But we laughed it off. No one thought he meant it. Another remembered a conversation from months earlier. He kept saying it should have been him. That he was always in the way. Had this been planned all along? Or had something snapped that night? The mother refused to believe it was intentional. He loved his brother. He wouldn't, he couldn't, but the evidence told a different story. And then there was the final question, the one no one wanted to ask. If it was really self-defense, why didn't he stop at one shot? The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back, their pens ready, their cameras waiting for the moment that would make headlines. The prosecutor didn't waste time. This was no accident. This was no heat-of-the-moment mistake. 27 shots. He paused, letting the number settle in. He had time to stop. He had time to think. And yet, he kept pulling the trigger. The defense countered. He was terrified. Years of tension, years of threats, all leading to one moment where he believed, truly believed, his life was at risk. Tell me, if you thought someone was about to end your life, how many times would you shoot? But it was the mother's testimony that cut the deepest. She took the stand, her hands trembling as she gripped the railing. The same hands that had once held both her sons when they were little, when their biggest fights were over who got the last piece of cake. Tears ran down her face, but her voice was steady. I lost one son that night, she whispered, glancing toward the defense table. I don't want to lose another. The jury shifted. Someone cleared their throat. A heavy silence followed. For weeks, the trial dragged on. Expert witnesses, forensic analysts, old friends, all painting two very different pictures of what happened that night. A brother pushed too far, or a calculated act disguised as fear. And then, the verdict. The courtroom held its breath as the judge spoke. Guilty. The words landed like a hammer. The mother let out a sharp cry, the kind that comes from somewhere too deep to reach. The shooter didn't move. He barely blinked. As if he had expected this all along. Years later, people still talk about the case. Some say justice was served. Others believe the system failed him. But one question remains unanswered. Did he regret it? No one knows. Because the last time his mother visited him in prison, she asked him that exact question. And he just sat there, staring at the table. Saying nothing. Years have passed, but the questions never faded. Some say he was sick, undiagnosed, untreated. That if someone had noticed the warning signs earlier, none of this would have happened. Others whisper that the mother knew more than she let on. That behind closed doors, the truth was far more twisted than anyone imagined. There were no reports of past violence. No documented threats. But something doesn't add up. A normal argument doesn't end in 27 rounds of gunfire. And yet, there's no clear motive. No hidden money, no betrayal, nothing that explains the rage that night. Could this have been prevented? If someone had stepped in, if the right person had asked the right question at the right time, would 2 lives have been spared? We'll never know. But in that quiet town, where people still glance over their shoulders when they hear raised voices, one question lingers. The mother still lives in the same house. The bullet holes were patched, the bloodstains scrubbed away, but the memories remain. And every night, when the world goes silent, she still hears it. The echo of gunfire that never really stopped. Somewhere, right now, another family is sitting at the dinner table, smiling for the last time. A door will slam. A voice will rise. A moment, just a split second, will change everything. This case is closed, but its shadow lingers. If someone had spoken up sooner, would things have been different? If someone had asked the hard questions, would 2 lives have been spared? No one ever thinks it will happen to them. Until it does. Stay safe. And if you sense something is wrong, don't wait until it's too late. If you found this story compelling, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. More cases like this are unfolding right now. You won't want to miss what's coming next.